to know. Now today we want to look at the plight of workers. Everyone is a worker, I want to believe. There's where you go, either you're self-employed or you're being employed by somebody, but what matters is what are the conditions there. And Uganda as a country, we are a signatory and a member to various conventions. Now today we want to focus on the International Labour Organization Convention, that is 190, which commonly or emphasizes that is elimination of violence and harassment in the world of work. What do we mean? Over a time, we've had a number of concerns being raised here and there. We've had our brothers in the Middle East, we've had our brothers in the quarry, we've had those in flour factories, in various areas where we've focused on industrialization and all workplaces, the number of conflicts. But today we want to understand, what do the laws say? How do they protect us? What are our rights? Well knowing that we are a signatory to this convention. And joining me on set is a person who is well equipped when it comes to labor rights and workers' rights, and that is Moses Mauku, who happens to be the General Secretary, Uganda Hotels, Foods, Tourism, Supermarkets and Allied Workers. What these people do so much is protection of people in these particular places of work. Moses, it's a pleasure seeing you once again. Otherwise, how have you been?
I've been fine. I've been fine, and I'm happy to meet you once again after a while. I wish to take this opportunity to greet Ugandans and invite them to share with me and my brother Chirabo the little information that I have on the Convention of ILO, that is 190. I would first begin by introducing myself. Mauk Richard Moses is my name. I am the General Secretary of Uganda Hotels, Food, Tourism, Supermarkets and Allied Workers Union, but I also serve as an executive board member of the National Organization of Trade Unions, representing the private sector unions. Our main function as labor unions or trade unions is basically to advance, advocate, promote, protect and defend the workers' socio-economic interests at workplace, and that we do through what we call collective bargaining. We engage with those that employ us or that employ the workers to determine the terms and conditions under which the workers are employed, whether in the public or in the private sector.
How easy is that, Moses? Because one is the boss, they made their money, and these people are coming to work for them. Now here I see a trade union coming in with the terms and conditions, bargaining agreement. If I began my own business, where do you, I'll look at the audacity for you to come and tell me if these are my terms and conditions. And second, if I fire what I have, there's still Ugandans that are willing to work.
Well, that is in your understanding of things, but I want to, let me not use the word educate, but inform you. It all begins from the word production and work. If you are an employer, or for anything that is done in the area of work, you will have three people that are key to the production of anything, whether services, whether manufacturing. You will always have the person who is government, who regulates, and you also have the person who employs, but you have the person who is employed. So the three partners, the government, the employer and the worker, are key and present in every workplace 24/7. When they say Uganda government, the first number one person you look at is His Excellency the President, because he manages the country as the president. And when they say government, the first thing you look at is the executive, then parliament, then look at the judiciary. But in a workplace there is government through representation. Every workplace, whether public or private, there is government, there is an employer specifically, but there is also a worker. So under the circumstances of production or work, all the three parties are key and important to any product that you see after. So you cannot underrate any of the three. Government cannot work without workers. An employer cannot work without the employees. So all of us need ourselves. And our services complement each other's interests, directly or indirectly. So we cannot avoid ourselves. We must work together. And for that purpose, the United Nations under the ILO arm stipulates the guidelines that we apply as all nations that are member states to the International Labour Organization, or UN per se. All the laws that we have here are actually generated or initiated by UN or ILO for the workers' issues. So these laws, the international standards, are the ones from which we derive our local legislation or legal framework, including the national constitution. It must speak to the international standards in form. They feature as either conventions, treaties, covenants, recommendations, and different forms. And these instruments are developed by all the parties. For our cases, workers, we now have about 9 different acts of parliament, the laws, the labor laws of Uganda. But they are derived from 2 articles in the national constitution. That is Article 29 and Article 40. They give birth to 9 different labor laws that we use for operationalization of whatever we do. So it's not about you having money and putting in place a factory or a hotel or any workplace of any sort. It takes you to first get baptized by government to be a company.
Very
you
true.
Seek, so by the government under the Ministry of Justice giving you a certificate to operate, government then becomes the partner in that business because you operate under the license by government. And for you even to construct the structures, you need workers. So you can never do it alone. You need government authorization and guidance. You need the person that turns around the wheel for you to change materials into sellable services or sellable products. You need the worker. For you, we also need money from you as a capitalist and the structures that you put there. So under the circumstance, you find that all these parties are very, very key and important and necessary in the production process. So we are guided by the international labor standards, which when these international labor standards are developed, we have as member states, Uganda as a member state of the ILO is under obligation to domesticate the international standards and by domestications there are stages. The first stage is to ratify the international standard, whether in the form of a treaty or a recommendation or a convention or otherwise. Our duty as a country is first to ratify. When we ratify, then we get to the second stage of domesticating by rewriting that in our own law, local legislation here. That is the process of domestication. And the other things can follow. So we do things in accordance to the international standards and also the local legal framework. That is what makes us negotiate with this big employer who has put his capital somewhere, because he needs government, he needs the workers as well. Even if you have a structure like UBC, if you are not here, who will manage the program? Do you think the director is the one who is going to do everything?
Run around.
Yeah. So the workers are necessarily
Now,
important.
Moses, also let's look into this. We are good at ratifying. Domestication, I may not have a final say on that, but implementation becomes a problem. There are many conventions we've ratified. There are many we've said we commit ourselves to do this. And as we speak today, now this one, ILO Convention 190, focuses more on elimination of all forms of, that is, violence, harassment at the world of work. To what extent have we gone as far as ensuring we domesticate, we implement this particular convention in Uganda? Giving us a simple analysis, because these are things you're in every day. Every day this is your business. You're going to workers here, workers there. So to what extent have we had a success as far as this particular convention is concerned?
I will tell you that I was in Geneva, Switzerland, during the discussion to bring into force this convention. I was in Geneva in 2017 when it was introduced. I was in Geneva in 2019 when we thought we would manage. We failed 2018, and it was only 2019 when ILO was making the 100 years in existence that every effort was put in place to ensure that we finalize Convention 190, and it was done amidst a lot of discussions. This convention came into being with the chairmanship of Uganda government in ILO, because the opportunity was given to Africa, and in Africa the opportunity was again given to Uganda to chair the processes that brought into force this convention in ILO Geneva. Unfortunately, Uganda has not ratified this convention to date from June 10th, 2019, but they were the owners of this convention. And I don't want to speak for government. Each time we ask for the developments or the further you have gone, they will give you promises. We have presented the white paper in cabinet. The cabinet is discussing, but to date, we feel ashamed that we have not ratified this convention as Uganda, which was the owner of the convention. And many other countries have so far ratified. We have countries even in Africa that ratified this convention. We haven't. We have countries like Fiji ratified, Argentina ratified, we have Somalia ratified, Namibia ratified this convention. We haven't. So it is some bit of a challenge, but we shall continue to ask government to undertake its mandate by ratifying this convention, because it is a well-intentioned convention.
Now that brings us to understand what is the content of inside this convention. What is there? Maybe this will give us a better shape to understand maybe the delay to ratify it, because some of these government commits itself, some have financial implication, others have legal implication, and many other matters. So what are some of the clauses, what are some of the content in this particular convention that we are discussing today?
You know, most of, if not all legislation, labor laws, and all types of laws, they have both legal and financial implications.
True.
There is no law which does not have the legal and the financial implication, because it is a law in the first instance, and it must be implemented if so enacted. So it has those implications. The only thing is, what is our role? What is our duty? I will start by telling you that the Philadelphia Declaration on Human Rights provided for wider scope of rights to human beings, including rights in the workplace. And the governing body, through the various annual reports that are made by the various countries in ILO, they identified a gap. And that was serious and quite disturbing in the world of work. And this gap was on violence and harassment in the world of work. That has a number of effects, substantial effects, on the human beings in the world of work. What you do at home with your wife can affect this person, or can affect both of you at workplace. Take an example. If you had a quarrel at home with your wife, and maybe a fight, and that fight goes physical, the following morning you have either injured yourselves, but you are supposed to appear in the studio. Your employer does not know what you went through in the night. You must appear on duty. You have two options: either to actually go and work with your bruises or get absent. You understand? Equally, many times for us, we work in the hospitality industry for some time, and during the time I was actively in a hotel.
I remember you during active at Sheraton Hotel there.
Sometime at Sheraton, Lake Victoria Hotel, then the Regents Group, those hotels in which I served as an accountant.
And one of the things you used to say is, you must have a smile all the time.
That's what they said. But for me, I was not a service person. I was an administration person. I didn't know some of those traits. However, one thing that we used to notice, I was a workers leader, even at that level. You would always find ladies. The lady is working with a bruise, and when she comes, she runs. Sometimes she would either come early, but she first goes into the locker room, where the changing rooms, and she cries for some 10 minutes. She comes to report with, she's forcing smiles with red eyes, and she will hardly tell you the reason. But the reasons, in most cases, are domestic in nature that affect her services at work. Many times you see a woman with even a bandage, and she will tell you it is an accident, when indeed it wasn't an accident. It was domestic violence, the other side. So the violence in the world of work looks at a wider scope of things that happen to a person at work, even when they have actually not happened in the workplace itself. And that is why the convention defined actions that are injurious, that can cause or have effects to an employee's performance on duty or at workplace, even beyond the real workplace. Do you know that when the law here, I mean the law in Uganda, defines an industrial accident to cover 60 minutes before you report on duty, but when you are en route to your workplace. When you incur an accident while traveling to go and work, it is referred to as an industry accident, because you got an accident just because you were traveling to go and work. It also includes the accident that you meet while in the workplace, but it also covers another 60 minutes after work, after you have signed out, but traveling back home. So equally, we have had issues of workplace. Some of the violence workers suffer are actually not inside where you work,
yes.
But these actions affect the way you are going to work. I think you understand. So this convention looks at a wider scope. That is why they say the world of work, not workplace. The world of work is slightly wider in scope than merely the workplace, because there are those things that happen to us outside workplace, but they affect directly the activities and the performances of our work. So I wanted to also explain, when we say that some of the details involved, we have gender-based violence as a component, I mean a big component of harassment, violence and harassment in the workplace. There are very many organizations, where even corporate organizations, where this vice is very present. Sexual harassment, gender-based harassment, gender-based violence, where people are disenfranchised, both male and female. Though, whenever you talk about sexual harassment, people are looking at only women. Sexual harassment is mooted on both the gender. Whether you are male, there are also women who seriously harass men. In the recent past, you have seen in social media, women molesting, they are beating up their husbands very seriously. Women, you are seeing also men also battering their wives. So it is either way. And all these things do affect somebody in employment. They affect the performance of somebody. Even at the workplace itself, there are a number of things that happen that affect an employee just because of his or her gender. Because I am male, when I ask for something from a lady supervisor, she thinks that I'm harassing her. You know, I was training somewhere recently, and I asked the workers that if a woman, for example, sat carelessly and you're even looking at her knicker, then you can tap her on the thigh.
Sit properly. Yeah.
Who has harassed who?
You who has stopped.
Are you sure?
Because you have told her, please, lady, sit properly. Why do you have to come and tap the thigh? But
by the time there are even stubborn people. Haven't you known of these ladies that do a number of things? They do some things stubbornly.
Yes.
With an intention of actually.
Some would even tell dress code is one's
it is my
right.
choice.
It is one's
my
right and
but
choice.
When your dress code is actually affecting those men that sit with you or that
they are
work
considered
with you.
immoral. Well, if I put on a shirt,
you understand? So
why are you
things
concerned?
Are subjective. And that's why it should take a conscious person to determine who is the perpetuator of harassment in certain situations. There are situations that are obvious, but there are those that are subjective when it comes to issues of gender-based violence and sexual harassment. But it is also important to focus more on actually the perpetuation of gender-based violence, because it happens by people using their superiority positions in employment to do actions that are going to be detrimental to the mentality of the other person, because the other person is a small person. When somebody, we always have these issues of when a manager presents his manifesto to a younger woman in a workplace, and the woman rejects the manifesto, it becomes a witch hunt. When this girl comes 10 minutes late, she's asked to go back, or she serves a sanction. And another person in whom he has no interest comes late 1 hour, and he says, you hurry, your colleagues are working. Those things do happen. And that is part of what we call gender-based violence. This person is suffering just because she's a lady. The other man advanced his interests, and she objected. And this goes further. If he has advanced interests in a certain girl, and the girl turns him down, any boy seen talking to the girl becomes an enemy to the same manager. So we need to educate people. We need to educate masses to understand what gender-based violence constitutes, what harassment constitutes, because many of us don't know. Even small things that we do may constitute, but we do it unknowingly. Same on the ladies' side. There are also a number of things that women do that affect the male employees in workplace, and for them they think it is okay. It's a woman. So it's an issue that we need to continuously educate. And what can only solve the problem? One is we want to continuously demand of government to ratify this convention
But Moses rightly said ratification is very, very important because you must have strong laws to hold people accountable. But even with what we have, has it yielded? Has it been sufficient enough?
I want to tell you one fact. For example, in Uganda, we have a number of labor laws. And their implementation is not even maybe 60%.
True.
You understand? But assume that the 60% is implemented. Why is it implemented? It is just because the law exists. So the existence of a law fundamentally is the most important and critical aspect of the process. Let us have the laws in place. You know, these laws, the implementation of these laws is not vested in the government alone. No. Every law has stakeholders, key actors, whose roles are defined in the implementation of this law, including you as Robert. If somebody does something bad to you, illegal to you, and you don't report, if somebody, for example, beats you up and you don't report, that person will have committed no offense until you report. So the implementation of the law begins with you, who is affected by what the law provides. So before we blame government, it's also important to inform and make the people get aware that implementation of the law is not only vested with government, but different actors. Take the example of the labor laws. The labor laws are supposed to be implemented by the government, the employers, and the workers themselves through their representative organizations. So in the implementation process, it depends on how you are going to push. Even if you reported a matter in court,
how are you
sometimes
going to push
they will require you to be present. So you don't just report and go and sleep. You have to do a follow-up. So these follow-ups are a way of implementing the other laws. So I cannot take it on government that government of Uganda does not implement laws. We, all of us, either out of ignorance or out of, to whom it may concern, syndrome, many laws are not being implemented to a bigger percentage. You get? So these vices can be there. We can have the the complaints. What is most critical is for us to have the legal framework written and placed somewhere. If the government is not implementing these laws adequately, time will come that maybe they will.
I love that. Well, I'm with Moses Mauku, who happens to be, the General Secretary of Uganda, Hotels, Food Tourism, Supermarkets and Allied Workers, HTS Union. We are looking at the International Labour Organization Convention 190, which looks at elimination of, that is, violence and harassment at workplaces. Now, Uganda, we are a signatory, but the challenge now remains on ratification. And Moses says this is one of the areas that he believes there will be hope for Ugandans to ensure that there is sanity at places of work. But Moses, let's also look at the concerned parties in equipping themselves, because knowledge is power. I know unions, you make demands.
Yes, please.
You try to push and push sometimes. But when we talk about issues of workers' rights, how is it something you find that workers are eager to interest themselves in, to know how there is a genuine cause, or do we only look for them when thunder strikes? If you moved around, you ask how, even when people are getting jobs, does it matter to know even terms and conditions? Someone will tell you, as long as I get a job. So much as you're trying to push this, the concerned people, I know those in unions, and of course not very many people are in unions. You find many employers will tell, I don't want, these are people that are causing problems for me here. Others will tell you, once you open the eyes, now management may be hard for me. So how informed, how positioned are the workers, even just to push for the demand of ratification?
First and foremost, let me begin from that point of information. Like I intimated in the beginning, all these laws that we have, the process of implementation requires the efforts by various people. One mistake that I see is that government on its part is supposed to provide enough information about these laws. But government has one sales point, Kimathi Avenue office, and UPPC and Tebe. When the laws are crafted, finished and written and printed, they deposit a copies in Kimathi Avenue office. And they deposit, I mean, there are also copies in Entebbe. Very few Ugandans even know where to find these laws. Very few of them know where to find these laws. The government is also supposed to popularize all forms of legislation through civic education to the masses. It is not being done. You can even imagine when it comes to elections, Electoral Commission will heighten some education during the year of election or a few months to election. Once the election is done, they drop all of the programs of informing the country what our roles are in this election. So it's not adequately done. Very many laws are existing, but the laws concerned don't know about these laws. Equally among the workers, very many workers don't know that they have the 9 pieces of legislation to guide their operations. They don't know. Equally, some of the employers also don't know some of these laws. So when you go there, actually they have the same mentality like you began by saying, but this is a private company, how do you come here? Even private companies are guided by the laws of Uganda. So some of them are actually ignorant about the law, and that is one of the biggest challenges. The other component is that even when you try to inform the workers, they have too much fear. One of the reasons the workers have fear in some organizations to even join the labor union is the level of unemployment. You see, sometimes I am asked or hired to go and conduct interviews in some organizations. But we always have this question, what would be the lowest salary you can accept to work for? And some employees will tell you anything. Anything.
Desperation.
So there is a lot of despair among people who are looking for employment. But the very person who has told you that he can work for anything, after 2 months, he begins complaining about the anything they gave him. So those things do happen. I just wanted to advise my fellow Ugandans, especially the workforce, the workers, it remains their fundamental right to join the workers' organizations for purposes of advancing, promoting, advocating, and defending their social and economic interests. There is a legal framework in Uganda that provides for protection, and those that are in unions have not been killed. They have not been beaten. Whilst others are fearing, others are enjoying. So for those that are still enjoying, identify the union where you fall, because workers' unions are registered by trade. That is why we have medical separate, the nurses alone, the teachers alone, plantation workers alone, those in the hotels, those in construction, those in roads, those in railways, different sectors, because we understand our disciplines a little better. So I just want to advise the Ugandans that if you are not, including you, I don't know if you have joined either media union or journalist, one of the two.
Media.
It's important to belong. You are represented politically. From your village, you have an LOC1. They represent you because government programs, they will not come to every homestead to tell you what they want. They will call the LOC1 chairman. So why do you avoid? And for us, we have an opportunity that when you become a worker, you qualify for another set of representation recognized by United Nations, the labor unions, the trade unions. So join a trade union of your choice and belong there. Sometimes when we go for elections of workers MPs, that is when some workers remember. But who elects? It is the organized workforce that does those things. And the organized workers are those workers that are members of one of the unions. They are the ones that represent the rest. Whether you have your PhDs, a primary 7 worker will represent you, even in NSSF board. Because for you are not organized, so you are not recognized.
Very interesting. Now, Moses, time is not so much on our side. Let me have your final remark to Ugandans, to government, which you're calling upon for ratification, and of course anything within that direction.
Thank you for this time that we are sharing. I want to appeal, first and foremost, to the workers to continuously demand the government to ratify Convention 190. Because for those of us who are in practice, we are meeting a lot of challenges in disciplinary hearings, in matters to do with gender-based violence, sexual harassment, and violence at work. Related things. But we don't have a clear law that should guide what we must do. The decisions are taken sometimes rightly or sometimes not rightly. And those are the people that are represented by the... How about the others who are not? There is a lot of infringement. There is a lot of violation, especially in the workplaces where there are no unions. So it is important that government fast tracks the process to ratify Convention 190 and also apply the accompanying recommendation 206 to ensure that we develop a law that is going to guide the protection and the elimination of this vice called violence and harassment in the world of work. It's quite important and necessary. I also wish to, at this point in time, thank the international federations, especially IUF has been trying to promote and supporting our activities in educating workers about violence and harassment in the workplace.
Well, thank you so much, Moses Mauku, for having joined us this morning in Good Morning Uganda Extra. And I hope those that need to hear this have heard the calling upon the ratification of that is International Labour Organization Convention 190 that looks at eliminating of all forms of violence and harassment at places of work. That is one regulation that we need to have to protect the workers in this country. Remember, anyone is vulnerable as long as you're a worker. At one time, you may face violence. At one time, you may face harassment. So how do we protect you? It is the law that will protect you very well. And also an encouragement, please be an organized worker, belong to a union. Have a lovely day. See you tomorrow, God willing. Remember, Ebola is with us, but also COVID is still present. So be very careful and report any incident, any suspected case of Ebola. Ministry of Health says they are ready to respond immediately and ensure that they also track all those that could have been in connection with that person so that they avoid the spread of this disease. See you tomorrow. God bless you.